Okay, good morning, everybody. So today we are continuing with lesson 4 from module 5. We're going to continue exploring with volume. So to start out, I just made a little chart and something we're going to go through together. So you don't need your pencil right now. You're just going to kind of watch and follow along with me for the first part, and then we'll go over to the problem set. So yesterday we talked about layers in a figure. So I built a figure here out of my blocks, and so I'm going to start like this. Okay, so you see I have a chart here, and it's asking for how many cubes are in each layer and how many layers there are, and then what the volume is. Okay, so again, we're going to break this figure into different layers and draw those and use the layers to help us find the volume. So if you look at the figure that I made, they want to know how many cubes are in each layer. So I'm going to take off just one layer here, and let's look at this layer. How many cubes are there in this layer? Well, the thing I'm going to do today that's a little different than yesterday is I'm going to write it as a multiplication expression. So I'm going to count across and down, and then I'm going to multiply those two numbers. So I have a row of 2, and then I have 2 of those rows. So I'm going to multiply 2 by 2. So in my chart here, I'm going to show that as 2 by 2. Because if I multiply 2 by 2, I'll end up with 4, which is what I have here. The next part of the chart wants to know how many layers there are. So you can see I have 1 layer, 2 layers, 3 layers. There are 1, 2, 3 layers. So I'll fill that in my chart. So if I look at what I have here, I have 2 times 2, which equals 4. So I'm going to think about that in my mind as 4. And then I had 3 of those layers. So I'm going to count 4 3 times, which is really 4 times 3. So 4 times 3 gives me 12. And I'm going to use cubic centimeters today. So if I break this apart into those, take those 3 layers apart, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, which matches what I found for my volume. So I basically used an area formula to find how many blocks are in the layer, and then I multiplied that layer by how many layers I had. Okay, so let's draw that. I had 3 layers. So I'm going to draw 2 lines. And in each layer, I had 2 times 2, which is 4. So each layer had 4 blocks. So 4 times 3 gave me 12. Okay. Now we're going to partition another way. Give me 1 second. Okay. So this time I am going to take my figure. Sorry, my blocks are a little unsteady. And I'm going to partition it this way. I'm going to split it side to side. So if I split it side to side, I have 1 layer here and 1 layer here. So I have 2 layers. Oops. I'll draw that on this next figure. So let's look at each one of those layers. This is one of those layers. I want to count how many blocks I have in each row and then how many rows. So here I have 1, 2, 3 in a row, and then there are 2 rows. So I'm multiplying 3 times 2. So in my chart, I'm doing 3 times 2. That shows me how many blocks are in this layer. How many layers did I break it into? I broke it into 2 layers. So 2 goes here in my chart. So when I do 3 times 2, I know 3 times 2 is 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I can put in my diagram here that each layer has 6. If I come over to my chart, I think about 3 times 2 is equal to 6. So there are 6 in each layer, times 2 layers. 6 times 2 gives me 12 centimeters, cubic centimeters. Okay, so we have one more way that we're going to partition this. I'm just putting my original shape back together. So the last way that I'm going to partition this, I've gone top to bottom and side to side. Now I'm going to go front to back. So remember yesterday, oh, I forgot to bring out some food for this today. Remember yesterday we talked about this like it's a knife. So to draw my picture, I think about where did my knife go through? It went through the top. So for this one, I'm going to draw the line through the top and down the side. This shows a front layer and a back layer. So a front layer and a back layer. So I know that I have 2 layers here. And I want to look at how many blocks are in each layer. So pull this up so you can see. I'm going to count my rows and how many rows there are, like an area, using an area formula. So I have 1, 2, 3 times 2. I have 2 rows of 3. So over here, again, I'm doing 3 times 2, and I had 2 layers. So when I did 3 times 2, I see that I have 6 blocks in 1 layer. There are 2 layers, so 6 times 2 is 12 cubic centimeters, and I'm going to label that in my diagram. So basically what I've been doing is the same thing as yesterday. I've been partitioning into layers, counting how many blocks are in a layer, and I'm identifying how many layers there are. Once I have all of that information, I'm just multiplying these numbers. Here I did 2 times 2, and I got 4, and then I multiplied that by 3 layers. So really, what I could have done here is I could have written this as a multiplication expression. I could have written 2 times 2, because that was how this bottom layer was made up, times 3 layers. 2 times 2 times 3 gives me the 12 cubic centimeters. In the next one, I had 3 times 2 in each layer, so 3 times 2 times 2 layers. So 3 times 2 is 6, which I have here, times 2 layers. 6 times 2 is 12 cubic centimeters. And this diagram would look exactly the same. In each layer, I had 3 2 times. I had a row of 3 2 times. And then I had 2 layers. So that also equals 12 cubic centimeters. Does anyone have any questions on that so far? Okay. We're going to look at another figure that I have right here. Can you see those white blocks? Okay. Switch to another color.
They're okay. We can make them out, but they do blend in a little more than the other colors.
I'm switching to red. Real
Okay.
quick. Okay. Okay. So here's my figure. And this one is a little bit different because when I look at doing my top to bottom layers, you'll notice that I only have one layer. There's nothing on top of these. So this one is a little bit different. Number of layers is going to be 1. But again, I'm going to count how many are in each layer. This is still a layer. There's only one of them. So let's look at this like an area model to figure out how many are in the layer. We're going to count across and then down. So counting across, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Times how many rows are there? I did 6 2 times. So my diagram here, I don't have to partition this one. I'm just going to fill in that one layer has 12 because 6 times 2 is 12. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So if I come over to my chart and I think about what I did in the first one, I multiply 6 times 2, which is 12, times 1 because there's only one layer. So that gives me 12 cubic centimeters again. So in this situation, our figure looks different, but it has the same area as the figure we did for the first example. Okay, now for my next partition, since the way my blocks are, it's easy for me to split this way. So I'm splitting along the top. So in my drawing here, I'll show that I split this one across the top. So I can see that I have 2 layers now, a front layer and a back layer. So this one has 2 layers. Now, how many cubes are there in each layer? Well, I only have to count one of them, one of the layers. So I'm going to count across and then down. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So 6 across, and how many down? Just 1. There's only one row of 6. So 6 times 1 is how I find one of these layers. The front layer has 1 row of 6. So in my chart, 6 times 1 gives me 6, times 2 gives me 12. Okay. Now the next one we're going to do is we are going to partition side to side. So okay. So this time we took the figure and we partitioned it side to side. So if you think about if this were like a cake or a cheese, remember we're slicing this way. So I'm going to draw each of those slices into my figure. So I made 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 cuts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. So now we're going to look at how many are in each layer. So let's just look at one of the layers here. I'm going to count how many across. So across, there's only 1. And how many down? There are 2. So my multiplication expression for the number of cubes per layer is 1 times 2. But how many layers did I have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So in each layer, there are only 2 blocks. I'll fill that in on my diagram. And then I'm going to multiply. 1 times 2 is 2. But then I had 6 layers of 2. So 6 times 2 is 12 cubic centimeters. Any questions? let's go over to your problem set. You're doing the same thing, but it looks a little bit different. So here we have some diagrams. They've drawn the blocks for us, and they want us to count how long, how wide, and how high each figure is. So length, we're going to count across the front. How long is it? For width, we're going to count how wide it is. So basically, how many layers go front to back. And then height is how tall it is. So how many layers are there if we go top to bottom? So the length, watch me count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I'm not going to count this because this is part of the width. This face is part of this cube, so I'm only going to count that once for the length. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So it's 5 centimeters long. How wide is it? Think of how many layers front to back. 1, 2 on this side. And the height is how tall is it? So how many layers are there top to bottom? 1, 2. So if we think about what we were doing in the 2 examples that I did before, we're going to take these numbers and multiply them, which actually is what number 2 wants you to do, is to write a multiplication sentence that you can use to calculate the volume. So for A, we had, zoom out. We had 5, 2, and 2. So to find the volume, you're just going to multiply those numbers. Now, 5 times 2, I know is 10, times 2 is 20. So my volume is 20 cubic centimeters. Does anyone have a question about what I did there? No? Okay.
And make sure that you are marking your length, width, and
height. You see
height.
that they took away the blocks. Did somebody have a question?
No, I was just telling them to make sure that they're labeling it, the length, width, and height, how you did to start, and do it for each one.
Okay. Yep. Yep. Yeah, so over here on this one, they've just labeled the how many inches each layer is. So you can even mark here length, width, and height. When we're finding volume, we're always using that formula. Length times width times height. Okay? You're always just going to multiply those 3 numbers. So the length, I'm just going to fill these in. The length is 4 times the width is 3 times the height, which is 4. So to solve this, we're just going to do 4 times 3 times 4. So go ahead and see if you can solve that, and I'm going to ask for an answer in a second.
And Ms. Hall, for me, your presentation's a little blurry right now. I don't know if it is for everybody else or not, but.
Me too.
Is that better?
Nope, still blurry. It was fine in the first part of the video.
Any better?
Still blurry.
Oh, I'm doing autofocus. I'm not sure why that is.
It could be Google Meets right now because you did freeze for a second.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll wrap this up quickly then. This is our last one. So we were multiplying 4 times 3 times 4. Does anybody have the volume on that? You
48.
You could even do in your mind, like I know 4 times 3 is 12 times 4. Do it right there on your paper.
48.
Yes. 4 times 2 is 8. 4 times 1 is 4. So this is 48. And I see that the unit is inches on this one. So it's going to be cubic inches. Anybody have any questions? Okay, awesome. So we're gonna stop there. Your job today on your exit ticket, you're gonna do this first one where it shows you the blocks. You have to identify the length, width, and height, and then the volume. And you do need to write your multiplication sentence to show how you found the volume. And then number 2 has you thinking about layers. So it has you thinking about one face. When it says face, you can replace that word with layer. So a top face is a layer. So it says a rectangular prism has a top face or a layer with an area of 20 square feet and a height of 5. So you're thinking about this one like I know one layer and then I know how tall it is. So you're going to try and use that information to identify the volume of that figure. All right, anyone have any questions? Sorry if I was freezing up and it was hard to see. If you have any questions or need anything today, reach out to us. We're here to help. And yeah, good job. Okay, I'm going to stop recording. Okay, bye everybody.
Did it stop?